if people have hands up and all that. Excellent.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Sweet. I think you're great.
Thank you all to the participants who are learning Zoom with us and the Zoom webinar with us. I appreciate your patience. So let's see here. I am going to. It is right at 6 o'clock. So
Yes, we can hear you.
were you?
Sure. Okay, everyone, please, we have interpretation services today, so please make sure that you, as a panelist, have joined the English channel. You can see that it should be down at the bottom of your screen or your phone, and there's little round globe, and it says English. Folks that will be listening to interpretation in Spanish will select Spanish.
And Abby, you can hear me?
Oh, everyone must select English, even if you're presenting. Always use the English channel, please.
Can everyone hear me? Yes, awesome.
I see we have a hand raised.
Yeah.
Already.
Anna, you have your hand up?
I did that on accident.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get started. Like I said, thank you all for your patience as we're learning this new platform. We are doing this through a webinar, and so we are learning as you can tell, and you're learning a lot right along with us. So I'm going to go ahead and start our slides. So as you get settled, if you could please confirm your name is correctly displayed on the participant icon, that would be helpful. We just want to make sure that we capture all participants' names correctly. So I'm going to give it just like a minute more as people get settled. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to the first
Okay,
Child
Carol.
Care.
Carol, I believe you need to join the English channel.
Okay.
So there should be a down at the bottom of your screen, there should be an interpretation globe, and you'll want to select English.
I'm not seeing that, Abby.
It could be under more.
Okay. Optimize, share computer sound, hide video, disable, pause, stop recording. Show webinar. Audio. I don't see that at all. I don't have that option. Can you change me?
So, Carol, in the same place where you found the green button for share,
Uh-huh.
there should be a little globe or something that says more.
I see the more, but I don't have the options. What I have is polls, pause, stop recording, disable annotation for others, hide video panel, share computer sound, or optimize for video clip.
Try stopping sharing.
Okay.
Okay, so now when you go down.
Now I've got it. Now,
Great.
so English.
There you go.
Okay. Yes, I can. Thank you.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yay. Okay, we're ready to get started. Thank you all for your patience. So, welcome to the first Family Child Care Rule Revision Workgroup meeting. We really appreciate your time and expertise and feedback as we work on revising the rule sets for both registered and certified family home child care. Before we get started, I'd like to review a couple of housekeeping items. For transparency purposes, this meeting is in webinar format, which you all have had the fun experience of figuring out with us as we're learning this system. So thank you in advance again for your patience. So for transparency purposes, like I said, this meeting is in webinar format, and all comments made either verbally or typed into the chat are considered public record. To ensure that all voices and input is heard, any comments that are placed in the chat will be read aloud. We just want to make sure that everybody's feedback is captured. And additionally, please feel free to indicate in the chat whether you agree with a comment that was stated, so we have an idea of how many people supported the thought or the recommendation. In addition, this webinar is being simultaneously interpreted into Spanish, so there may be pauses during the meeting to allow for interpretation to take place. Lastly, as a reminder, if you feel comfortable, please feel free to be on camera. It's certainly not required, but we'd love to see your faces if you feel comfortable with that. And in order for us to kind of get to know who is involved with the work group, and to provide an opportunity to test out your Zoom controls, we're gonna go ahead and do some introductions. So if you would please raise your hand using the raise the hand function. And when your name is called, unmute your microphone and provide the following: your name, where you're Zooming from, and what your connection is to family child care. When you're finished introducing yourself, you can lower your hand and call on someone else who has their hand raised. So I'm going to begin the introductions, and I'll pass it off to the other DELC staff first. So my name is Carol Peterson, and I'm Zooming from Central Oregon, and I'm a policy analyst with the Child Care Licensing Division. And I'm going to be the facilitator for these work group meetings. And I will pass it off to Abby.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Abby Strom, and I am also a policy analyst within the Child Care Licensing Division. And I will pass it over to Jenny Sauter.
Hello there. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jenny Sauter. I'm a regional manager for the Child Care Licensing Division in Portland. I'm actually in Gresham right now. I actually started my career many, many years ago as a family provider. I worked in a program, and then I started my own program. And then I've worked in for-profit and nonprofit childcare for about the last 30 years before I came to state service. And I've been a licensing specialist, senior licensing specialist, and now regional manager. And I'm going to pass it to Allison.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Delory. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the child care labor liaison here at DELC. I'll be taking notes tonight. And I've been in the field for a long time. I've been an infant teacher and toddler teacher, education coordinator, and director at a center, and also some experience with family child care back in Massachusetts. So happy to be with you here all tonight. Thank you. And I think, is Fabi still on? She might have hopped off.
I think she hopped off. Heidi, do you want to go?
Let's see, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yay, I am not skilled with tech stuff. I'm Heidi Lawler. I am a certified family childcare provider. I have a small program with 16 children in the North Tabor. prior to doing that, I was a center director for many years. And before that, I was a teacher. I've been doing childcare since 1988. And I'll hand off. Sorry, I'm also have sunscreen in my eye from the end of the day today. Can I hand off to Tina?
Hi, I am Tina. Everybody says Tina, but that's okay. My mom named me Tina and spelled it like Tina. I'm a registered family child care provider. I own two Granny's Child Care in Springfield. I have 5 children at the moment, from 5 months to 5 years. I've been doing childcare off and on for about 25 years. And I also was a dental assistant for a very long time and practiced in a child dentist office. So I dealt with children there also. And that's about it. And I'm not sure how to see who else's hand is up. So if somebody could pass it to somebody, that it would be great.
Great. Danny?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Danny Stam Thomas. My pronouns are she and her. I am Zooming currently from Salem, Oregon. Let's see, I am the Early Learning Hub Director for Clackamas County. Is one connection, but my connections to family childcare go back pretty far. I was doing childcare started about 14 years ago in center-based before becoming a quality improvement specialist with childcare resource and referral and supporting family childcare providers that way. Really appreciate being invited to this group, and I think next is Denise Hudson.
Hello, can you hear me? Awesome, hopefully. Okay, so I'm Denise Hudson, and I am currently in Redmond, Oregon, and serving Central Oregon in the childcare resources. I've been here, this is my 18th year, and before that I did childcare in my home, and when the registered license became available, I became a registered family childcare provider during that time. Oh, and I'm supposed to pass it on. Rose.
Sorry, technical difficulties on my. I'm Rose Daly, and I am in from Coos Bay, North Bend, Oregon on the coast, and I have a certified in-home family child care that I've had for going on 23 years. And I will pass it off to Annalise.
Hi, Annalise Shahan. I'm joining tonight from Portland metro area, Clackamas County licensed family child care provider, and I'm here tonight representing our union child care providers together, Ask Me Local 132. And I will pass it to Kelly Heichel.
My name is Kelly Heichel, and I'm in Roseburg. I have 2 certified family child cares, and I'm going to pass it to you, Anna. It's you, Anna.
I am Anna Patel. I'm zooming from Portland. I'm also currently at my son's baseball game, so multitasking. I have been a in-home family child care provider for 12 years. I currently have a certified family with 16 children. I am also here representing our local child care provider through the union, 132 as well. And with that, I will pass to Claudia.
Claudia, you're on mute. You're. There.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Claudia Morales. Estoy en Beaverton y soy proveedora certificada. Tengo 16 niños actualmente. Gracias.
Thank you, Claudia. Flor?
Flor.
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Flor Silva. I am I'm part of CCRNR Washington County. It's nice to see Danny and also Abby. Danny worked with me when I used to have my childcare with CCRNR, and then Abby was my specialist, my license specialist. So it's nice to be here. I used to have a childcare before I moved to CCRNR, and I am very excited to be here. Thank you.
Gabrielle?
Hello. I typically go by Gabby, but Gabrielle's fine as well.
Okay.
I am coming to you from Springfield, Oregon. And I feel like I'm always the newbie nowadays. I started my program in October and have a registered childcare in my home with 10 children all in all. Before that, I was in mortgage for like a decade, so I'm totally fresh here and very excited, happy to be here.
Great.
And I can pass off to, I think it's Carmen next.
Hi, I'm Carmen. I'm from Hermiston, Oregon. I am about 27 years into being certified family provider. And I think I might be one of the longest running ones in town. So I'm starting to show my age a little bit. But yeah, that's all about me. Not much there. And I'll pass it to, what do we have? Is it what we got here? Rosbinda?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Rosbinda. Soy una promovedora nueva. Llevo 6 meses con la licencia y llevo 2 años aquí en Oregón. Vivo en Beaverton. Gracias por el tiempo.
And Lorena.
Hello, I am Lorena Moring from St. Helens, Oregon, and I was doing registered home daycare for I think 14 years, and I currently got certified for certified family home daycare. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carmen, is that a leftover hand or do you have a
Oh shoot, sorry.
That's okay.
Apparently I have the attention span of a 2-year-old. There we go.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you being here. We are really excited to start talking about what we are going to go over. And so I do want to go ahead and just quickly go over the meeting agenda. What we're going to do is our next step is we're going to be reviewing some group norms. We're going to go over some engagement and rulemaking process, scope and format of the work group, some work group guiding questions, the rulemaking guiding principles and engagement activities, and then our rule revision timeline and engagement milestones. So this first meeting truly is kind of framing up where we are at with the process and kind of bring you guys up to speed in terms of the rulemaking process and our engagement. We are going to have a few discussion topics. We're going to discuss the group size requirements, and that is for certified family. It's specific to certified family homes. We'll take a quick break, and then when we resume, we will continue with record keeping and notifications and then we'll go over the closing and the next steps. If at any time you have any questions along the way, please feel free to raise your hand or pop them in the chat. And like I mentioned, Abby will go ahead and be monitoring that, and she will pop on and read anything from the chat that you may have posted. So we're going to start this meeting by just reviewing some standard group norms that will help guide us throughout this meeting. We want to make sure that we're allowing opportunities for all voices to be heard. We want to take space and make space. We want to remain focused on the scope of the work group, with the understanding that if other topics come up, we'll capture those in the notes, and we'll go ahead and put them in the parking lot, and we will address them at a later time. Want to be open for respectful discussion and have an open mind and ask clarifying questions to confirm understanding. Encourage and honor individual perspectives and truths, and recognize that all experiences are valuable and can contribute to our shared understanding of the work. Please use the raise the hand function or chat for comments, and practice active listening. Listen to understand and give time to reflect before responding. And then just lastly, just to seek commonality. We may disagree, which is totally fine, but just know that we're all in this and we have a shared commitment. So after reviewing this list, if there are any other suggestions you would like to add, please place your suggestion into the chat, or you can feel free to email me after the meeting and I'll add it to the list. I really try hard to go ahead and review these group norms at the beginning of every meeting, just so that we can ground ourselves in the work before we start diving in. So this is a quick high-level view of our engagement and rulemaking process. This process is typically what CCLD follows whenever we're creating rules or revising rule sets. So we're starting here with the community work group. It's between 12 and 15 community members. You were all selected through an application process, and you all support the development of rule language for specific identified topics. The next step in the engagement process is a rulemaking advisory committee, or a RAC. That too consists of 12 to 15 community members. It's selected through an application process, and it provides feedback on the entire rule set. So it's a little more in depth than just the topics that we'll be covering. Another factor with the RAC is that they're responsible for identifying any additional fiscal and equity impacts, as well as providing input on clear rule language. So we will be posting for the RAC probably closer to August or September, and we will be conducting the RAC early fall 2024. You also have an opportunity to provide feedback through a public comment period. So the full rule set will be available for feedback through our public comment, and that will be early fall 2024, approximately the same time that the RAC will be taking place. So the cycle of feedback that this current engagement will follow our community work group is we will present topics for discussion. We're going to ask for solutions and input for particular rule language. And then we're going to present that rule language and request feedback. So we take your information back to the rulemaking work group, craft it, and we will bring it back. And sometimes the cycle goes through a couple times before we are able to move on to the next topic. So the question is, what's a community work group? So it's the first stage of engagement where specific topics will be presented and discussed with you all. The feedback received will help support the development of rule language of those specific topics. The work group topics will be sent out prior to each meeting, similarly to the initial email I sent out for this meeting. And you will also receive the Zoom links a minimum of a day in advance, and then I believe an hour in advance of the meeting. please monitor your spam or your junk mail because it's common for those invites to go or those links to go into that folder. So work group members will provide feedback or suggestions on where possible changes can be made on those topics that we're discussing. And as discussed in the previous slide, we will review the feedback received during the work group meeting, and based on that feedback, then we'll develop proposed rule language incorporating those suggestions when possible. We'll bring the topic back to the next meeting for additional review. However, if we do not get through all the information during the meeting, we will discuss the topics that weren't covered at the next meeting. So it's very important for us to cover all of the identified topics just so that we can gather as much input from you all as possible. In an attempt to keep within the scope of the work group, if other topics arise, those items will be captured in the meeting notes and added to the parking lot and will be addressed at a later time. You can always feel free to email me or Abby or Jenny at any time if you have any further questions or comments that you would like to go ahead and include. There's no wrong door. We want to make sure that we're capturing your input as much as possible. So some work group guiding questions. When reviewing the work group discussion topics, some guiding questions and thoughts to consider is how would this requirement look in a family childcare environment? What resources may be needed to implement the requirement? And what recommendations do you have to alter the proposed requirement? If something does not, if we do not clearly present the information, please ask. We're happy to clarify. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to provide those recommendations to any sort of topics that we're presenting. So this slide represents the CCLD's rulemaking, guiding principles, and engagement activities that we've completed so far, as well as what will be completed in the future. The guiding principles listed on this slide are principles that CCLD follows when creating or revising rule sets. Most recently, these were used when revising the Certified Child Care Center rules in 2023. So the principles are, we want to examine and remove barriers to align with feedback from the field. We want to approach this from a plain language approach so that everybody understands the requirements, so that implementation will be so much easier for folks to follow the rules. We want to align with best practice when possible and clarify existing practice. And we're really attempting to organize the rules in a logical manner so that, for instance, in the notification section, there aren't various areas of where the requirements lie. We want to have it in one area so that people can easily navigate the rule book. One other guiding principle is that we want to create consistency across license types with how the rules are laid out, as well as how they are worded. That will be easy for people who want to transition from different license types, from a registered home to a certified home, or vice versa, or to a center. If we create consistency across all license types, then that just helps support people. Mind you, the rules will read differently depending on the environment, but we are trying our hardest to create consistency when possible. So off to the side, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the different engagement activities that we have conducted so far. And so I will go ahead and start. So the engagement on these rule sets actually began prior to this timeline with some engagement conducted prior to the pandemic. I'm confident that several of you probably were involved with that initial engagement that took place. Once the pandemic hit, we did need to take a pause and shift our focus to basically being able to help navigate kind of uncharted waters. We picked the work back up and we've continued with working on revising both the rule sets. We started this round of engagement process in January when we began holding listening sessions for both registered and certified home providers. You may recall receiving information and invites on how to participate in these sessions. And many of you, I can see, I recognize people, many of you participated and we appreciated your feedback. We heard from 46 providers during those listening sessions from 13 different counties from across the state, and they represented both urban and rural perspectives. We heard from both English, Spanish, and Russian-speaking providers, and the intent of the sessions was to better understand from your perspective what rules are challenging to follow, what rules providers would like to see added or removed, and what barriers that you all have been experiencing operating your licensed family childcare businesses. One other engagement opportunity that we offered was to engage via feedback through an online feedback form that was available on DELC's website. This form was active from February through April, and it provided CCLD with 62 responses from English, Spanish, and Russian-speaking providers. So we gathered all of the feedback from both the listening sessions and the online feedback form. We categorized the responses and have used that information as a basis as we draft the revised rules. The star on the slide does indicate where we're at with the rulemaking process currently. And as the slide indicates, the Rulemaking Advisory Committee, or the RAC, will be held in September or October. The rules will be presented to the Early Learning Council in December for proposed adoption, with a proposed effective date of July 2025. The 6 months between the adoption and the effective date allows time for staff training, the development of resources and technical assistance documents for providers, and it will also allow time for any necessary IT updates that we may need to our licensing database to support the implementation of the revised rules. So does anybody have any questions so far?
No.
Okay, great. So I'm going to move us on. Now that we've covered some basic information on CCLD's rulemaking and engagement activities to date, we're going to dive in to start discussing the work group topics for this first meeting. So the first topic we'd like to discuss and bring to you for your input is the group size, which is certified family home specific. So we want to acknowledge the unique differences between a home-based environment and a center environment, because the two are very different. As we heard from the listening sessions, a home allows for children to be in a mixed age environment with younger and older children in the same space. So that allows for more fluidity throughout the day, children to come together, and basically it allows for younger children to learn from older children. The suggestion we received was to remove this requirement of the separation of groups because it just didn't make sense for a home environment. Though we're proposing to remove the group size requirement, our goal is still to add in protections for non-mobile children through separation, but we want to allow for all the children to be in one group or space. Because as you guys, all the certified home providers on this committee know, we allowed for groups to come together for many large group activities, for eating, for napping. So there truly was a limited time where they needed to be separated. So it really didn't make a lot of sense to keep that in. So our proposal is to remove the group size requirement, add a requirement that non-mobile infants have some separation from mobile children though they're allowed in the same group. So I'm interested in terms of your thoughts on this before we move forward with talking about the ratios. Any thoughts? Yes, Kelly.
Pushing too many buttons. I think that is a good change because having certified family, it's tough to keep the children apart. And when you have them together, it is so much better educational wise. Older siblings can help younger siblings. It's amazing when they are together. So I think that's a positive thing.
Great, thank you. Is it Tina? I want to pronounce your name right.
Yes, it's Tina.
Okay.
I was just wondering what the requirements would be for the non-mobile children. When you say there's some separation, can you clarify that?
Yeah, so some examples of potential separation would be having maybe furniture so that non-mobile children will not be trampled by older children. Likewise, older children can play with more advanced toys and equipment without the infants, the fear of choking. So potentially having furniture or a play yard or something like that. But again, we're kind of interested in hearing what your thoughts are on what would make sense for your environment.
That helped a lot. I agree that small non-mobile children need to have some kind of separation. I have a 5-month-old in my daycare, and everyone else is 2.5 and above. So when we're all in the same space, the non-mobile child is in a bouncer, or I'm holding them, or they're in a playpen type environment. So I understand the need for that. I just wanted some clarification, and I agree that there does need to be some separation. Because a excited 5-year-old isn't going to see a baby laying on the floor.
You're exactly right. And it looks like we have another hand up. Is it?
Sí, buenas tardes. Yo soy proveedora registrada y pienso lo que yo he visto con mis niños, la mayoría tienen la misma edad, pero si hay uno más pequeño, por ejemplo, si tengo de 1 año, de 2 años y de 3, ellos ayudan al más pequeñito a que se mueva porque ven que los demás andan corriendo. Entonces, si él apenas tiene 7 meses, empieza cuando hace su tummy time, cuando está en su hora de ejercicios, él ve que los demás se mueven y él se esfuerza. Entonces, para mí es mejor que estén juntos, pero cuando tengo niños más grandecitos, a la hora que los chiquitos duermen, los grandes salen a jugar afuera. Entonces, no sé cómo ayudaría una regla a separarlos. Si para mí, en mi opinión, y lo que yo he visto es que los que se llevan meses, como 1 año a 2 años, ayudan al más pequeñito porque los está observando, ya sea que esté en un brincolín o que esté desde su espacio donde él hace su tummy time, pero los está observando y lo ayudan a que él avance. Yo lo he visto en mi casa.
Thank you. And Floor.
Sorry, I was moving in spaces. I had a Montessori program in my house. It was a certified family. And I always have the infants with my 3, 4, and 5 years old. And there has never, I mean, thank God, there was never an issue. But with that said, I think it's good that they can be in the same space together. I wish that we can be a little bit more specific on what, giving examples when we say some separation from mobile children, because once the providers go and read the manual, they're going to start asking themselves, right? What type of, what? So if we can add that to the rule, it will be helpful for everybody just to have examples of what they can have as a separation in their environment.
Great. That's great feedback. Thank you. And Heidi.
I I have a Montessori inspired program, and it's common to have mixed age groups. So this is a wonderful rule change for me, because I'm such a rule oriented person that I spend a lot of time going, oh, we have, so this is a blessing, and I'm very excited about this rule change. I think I agree that a little more clarity would be helpful. However, every person's environment is so significantly different that I don't think you can be so super specific. In my case, I have 3 large rooms, so I can be really separate. But if someone was registered and they had a smaller space, maybe separate for them would mean a playpen or a little baby gate. So I would be cautious about putting too much specificity in that goes, it just would go back to creating a rule that might get violated more accidentally, or it would be hard to be practical.
Oh, that's great feedback, Heidi. Thank you. And Abby, I see your hand up. I'm going to call on Denise first, and then we'll go ahead and go to you. So Denise.
Okay, thank you. I think this is great. And I do agree with everyone that said, you know, having it be a little more specific, and also the duration of time, especially if we're talking about a high chair or a bouncy seat or something like that, as far as how long is that that child to remain in that position during that time. And so I think the duration is important as well.
Thank you. And Abby.
Yes, I just wanted to read a couple things we have in the chat, and also give a reminder to the panelists on the call today that if you can, and you see in the chat function, there's this little blue box that says host. If you click on the little blue box, it might say host and panelists. You want to make sure you select everyone so that everyone can see the chat. If you've selected host and panelists, only the host and panelists can see that. And we do have at least one attendee watching us today. But if not, I will always read them as well. Heidi says, and she spoke to this, I believe, too, that this is a good idea, that this is a tricky rule, or this was a tricky rule, and can change, and this change makes it possible for providers to do the best in the moment. Kelly says having a small area so non-mobile children, a non-mobile child is safe, a corner gated off, playpen, something that protects them, and that this will look different in each environment. Anna says, I agree that this is a good idea. Examples of this, of what this could look like in the rule book, as Kelly stated, to provide clarification for providers and for licensing is important. As the rule stands right now, leaving a baby in a playpen would fall under the restrictive equipment. So clarification on kind of what that space would look like what that separation would look like is important. Kelly says that it's hard to put that in writing, that each environment can be very unique and different. Danny says everyone is not an option that I have. Heidi, I think it's more important to put limits on restrictive equipment than it is to separate, as children can be quite careful and mindful, but the equipment is really not great. Anna says, The one main issue with keeping them separated is that if an adult needs to be with that baby separate from everyone, they couldn't quickly move to help older children if something were to happen fast, or if somebody needed if something were to happen that needed a fast intervention. And oh, there is everyone choice. Okay.
Abby, they are talking about the option in the chat. There is not the option of everyone in the chat.
Oh, there
which
is not an
that
option of everyone in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was like, oops. I was like, what's going on? Okay, I'll just continue to read it. It's okay. Don't even worry about it.
Abby, I think most of us joined as and were set as panelists, so I can
Yes.
see everything in the chat.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just not an
I think
everyone option.
I am only reading for the folks watching on the webinar. So, and I will continue. There is more. Anna also adds that I've had more issues with older children stepping on crawling babies than non-mobile babies. So maybe partial separation would be sufficient, leaving somewhere for an adult to walk quickly away, but would also keep children mindful of where babies are. So lots of very useful feedback in there. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And Heidi, I see your hand is up. And you're muted.
I'm going to selfishly say I don't have infants under 1, but I do sometimes have children under 2. Is there a way to differentiate and say, if you have children under a year old that are non-mobile and have something specific to that? Because again, I think it's a little, the circumstances are different. So I have mixed age, but they're not infants, or maybe, but I feel like the old rule still applied because they were under 2. So there's that little margin that could be tweaked a little bit.
Okay. That's great feedback, and we'll take that back to the rulemaking group and get their responses as well. Tina.
Yeah, I just wanted to also comment, being the only person the only caregiver in my daycare, separation in another area is not possible for me. It has to be in the same area because I'm only one person. So I can't be in another room watching a baby and have 4 other kids in another room by themselves. So that's something to consider. I'm not sure, because I'm not certified family. I don't know if one person can run a certified family or not, but I'm registered family and there's only one of me. So having separation would have to be in the same area, like a playpen or something to that effect.
Okay, thank you. And Annalise.
Hi, good evening. I would just like to make a suggestion that as the rules are being drafted, this all from the DELC side sounds great. I think it's definitely the right time to remove the group size. I operate a childcare program designed for children 2 and under. I do have a couple of 3-year-olds and I do have a 4-year-old. They tend to go to preschool during the day and are only here for wraparound care. So I don't really have issues with protecting non-mobile infants or children that are crawling, because that's what everybody's doing in my daycare for the most part, most of the time. What I would suggest is, and is that we follow perhaps what other states do, which is that a written plan that is incorporated into the program's policies be developed or required to be developed to ensure the safety of the children in different age groups or different mobility groups.
Oh, that's a great suggestion, Annalise.
Instead of separation, you just have a plan. And so, you know, for us here, that involves the layout of the space, careful consideration of the environment, rotation of staff, and from, you know, rotation of groups of children from indoors and to outdoors and outdoors to indoors and whatnot. So I think that someone said it earlier, maybe it was Kelly Heichel, that it's really just there's so many differences in programs, and we need to, each of us, and we can get hopefully, you know, technical assistance from our licensing specialist if that's what it takes. But I think that's important, right? To that each program autonomously develop the environment. I mean, we're all experts in our own childcare with our own groups. So,
right. And each, like you were saying, each environment is so specific that it would lend a little bit more flexibility to meet health and safety within those environments. So that's really, really valuable feedback. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And Abby?
Hi. Yes, there's just a couple other things in the chat. I believe Tina did come off mute and state her comment. Anna does say that I've also had children who were over 1 that could have fallen into the non-mobile due to medical difficulties, due to spina bifida. So it's important to ensure that those children aren't being separated for being or left out due to that, as it's also very important that they Rose says a child with special needs could be non-mobile at different ages. So agreeing with that point. And then Loren, sorry, says, same with me, separation is not possible because it's only me and my program, definitely with one person. And then Heidi says that she agrees with Annalise that the environment informs best practice, and a plan of action would be a great solution for that.
Right.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay. And Heidi, your hand is up. Okay.
It's an accident.
Okay.
I can fix it.
Okay. So one other aspect I did want to bring forward on this slide to kind of move us forward is about the layout of the ratio table. So we are proposing the layout of the ratio table will be revised in the rule book. And the group size requirement that is currently listed under the notes will be removed. This is going to be replaced with one ratio table that shows the mixed age grouping and how many staff are required based on the number of ages and children in the group. So the technical assistance document for you, the certified home providers on this meeting, the technical assistance document that most likely your licensing specialist has provided you with the graph of how many children and how many children under 2. We're going to take that, we're proposing to take that and put that into rule and remove the current layout that has the 3 separate ratio tables depending on the ages of children in each group. So, and Abby, looks like
there are just a couple comments in the chat. Rosbinda says that mobilization would not be good for me anyway because it's only me in the program, and I'm sorry if that translation is not correct. Anna says that a written plan seems to be the best as seems best as suggested, as it can be adapted to environments and layouts for each program. Kelly says, yes, it's so confusing the way it is now. And that's in respect to the adult to child ratios. And then, oh yes, the word maybe for me mobilization. I'm sorry about that translation. Maybe for me mobilization wouldn't be good because it's just me and my program. So, okay. once again.
Well,
And,
okay.
and Carol, I just want to let you know that it's 6:53.
Yes, got my watch. Thank you. So with that, I do want to go ahead and move us to a 5-minute break. So if you can come back right at 7, that would be fabulous. Thank you. Hi, baby snacks. Okay, I'd like to bring us back. And Abby, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, there was just one additional comment that we didn't get to before we had our break was Heidi says that as long as it's possible to include a caveat for programs that have the space for the group to split off and say 10 children over 2 and 6 under or something like that. And I think that that is I'm thinking in reference to, and Heidi, please come off mute and clarify for us. I think, is that in reference to the ratio table all being one, but still being able to divide out the group as you see a need for as well?
Yeah, just if I just had 2 teachers, I would have one teacher take my 10 preschoolers and I would stay with the children that were under 2 but over 1.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi.
So I'd like to transition us into documentation and record keeping. So this was we received a lot of feedback from everyone during the listening sessions and the online feedback form. So what we heard is that documenting application of sunscreen and diaper cream is a burden, that declaration of viewing requirements should be removed, and that enrollment shouldn't require doctor and dentist information, and that attendance records are not necessary nor reliable. So what we wanted to do is within that work on some proposed changes. So our proposed change for the documentation of sunscreen or diaper cream would be the application of non-medical items, including sunscreen, does not need to be documented. Because as you can see during the documentation of sunscreen in the current rule, it specifically calls out sunscreen. And on D down here, it talks about a written record of all medications administered, listing as a minimum the name of the child, type of medication, signature of the caregiver administering the medication, date, time, and dosage given. So the way our proposed wording is, would this lift the burden that was addressed and we heard during the listening sessions? And do you have any further recommendations on this topic of how potentially it could be documented, or other suggestions for the proposed change to this requirement? Yes, Kelly.
So I don't think having to keep track of sunscreen and diaper cream is necessary. As providers, we know when we do it and we tell that to parents. Having to document it and keep that documentation seems, I don't know, silly. I know some kids are allergic to sunscreen, but parents usually know that ahead of time and we take care of that and they have their own special stuff. So I do think that the sunscreen does not need to be documented.
Okay, so are you thinking that our proposed change of the application of non-medical items, including sunscreen, does not need to be documented? Do you think
Right.
that's what I'm hearing? I just want to clarify that
Not
you think that's a
non-medical.
positive change.
Medical stuff definitely, but non-medical, like, you know, sunscreen and diaper rash cream, that kind of stuff that's not prescription, not, you know, medical, we shouldn't have to.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Abby.
So just a couple of questions in the chat or comments in the chat is Anna asks, can examples be given about what non-medical items are? And I know sunscreen is one of them that's been identified, as has diaper cream as well. I'm trying to think of other ones that might be maybe like lotion if you're applying like moisturizer or lotion, unless it's like medicated would be another one. And Danny asks, does non-medical include first aid ointments? And I'm not sure about that one. There might be other requirements for documenting injuries, but I'm not exactly or I wouldn't know. I'm not 100% certain on whether first aid ointment would be considered a non-medical item. Heidi also says that I agree that sunscreen does not need to be document, diaper cream, but pain relievers should, yes.
Okay.
And that would be a medical item.
Yes, Danny.
Yeah, so just wanting some clarification here because I feel like the word non-medical is an interesting word to use in this case, when really what we're talking about is like maybe not medicinal or non-prescription. But we want to include things that have medicine in them, because pain relievers should be tracked. Of course, you don't want those things to be given to babies without, everyone knowing how much and when the last time it was given. And in the same way that like diaper cream you can use every hour, and that's maybe what's needed for the baby, right? So just wondering if like the words there should be different, because non-medical items, I don't necessarily know what that means, but like unmedicated, okay.
Okay.
Well, there's no medicine in this, might be different.
Okay. Or non-prescription or something along those lines.
Yeah, I also worry though that non-prescription
Yeah.
would leave out things like pain
It
relief.
would.
You can buy OTC
Right.
ibuprofen, and that isn't a prescription, but probably needs to be regulated in
Yes.
its dosage and things.
Yep. Yes. Annalise.
I would stay away from non-medicated because there are things that are not medicated, but not medicine, right? Not medicated, but still you need to keep track of, like if you're giving vitamins, is a common one. I think that a lot of states call out, right? That if a provider administers or gives vitamins, which I always made parents give at home, I'm not giving kids vitamins. But, one could argue like there are certain beverages, right? Protein shakes and things like that probably need to be tracked. So I think that what I think Delk is really looking at are unusual, right? What we're looking at here is sort of unusual, irregular administration or use of something, either that is ingested or is, because that's really where this kind of goes, right? Is that it's not the usual, right? Not every child would use it. It's not, whereas sunscreen, right? Typically everyone would use it every day. Pain relievers, you don't use regularly and every day on everyone. Do you see where I'm kind of headed with that? Because I think that's really what you're trying to get at.
Do you have like specific wording that you could that you could offer?
Yeah, I just don't have it handy.
Okay.
But I can provide some examples from other states.
Super.
I can email those in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Denise.
On the second part of the proposed changes, would they allow the 12-month parent authorization? Am I missing in the current rule where it talks about that, or is that something new?
So that is, I'm gonna actually bump that to Abby, because I think that you may have a better handle on that question.
I know I would have to look up what the current rule is, but authorization. I don't think there's a time period on the medication. This is for certified family. So non-prescription must have a signed, dated, written authorization from the parent is on file. So there's no time on that. So
So we're putting a time on there.
it's
You're
a
putting
12-month
putting a
authorization
time
for
on there. Okay.
non-medical items.
Clarifying. Yes, thank you. And Floor?
I will agree with what everybody's saying about the not medical and what terms are we gonna use for that. And if we are saying that providers have a hard time with the sunscreen and diaper cream because that's something that we obviously put on children every day, many times a day. I think we can just leave it like a very simple of the documentation of sunscreen and diaper cream is not necessary, but other non-prescription or prescription medicine will have to be documented. Because as we were saying, the Tylenol and all that stuff, you know, even the nose drops and things like that, they need to be documented for the good sake of the provider. So I will just leave it very simple, you know? No, that sunscreen and diaper, that's out of, you don't need to document that, but everything else has to be documented.
Documented. Okay, great, Floor, thank you. And Abby?
In the chat there, Heidi says, think I agree that sunscreen doesn't need to be, we read that one, but a follow-up is think being very specific, sunscreen and diaper cream. Tina says diaper cream says medicated on it. So really getting to that comment about the use of the word non-medicated. And Heidi says you could say sunscreen and diaper cream can be applied with a blanket consent form at enrollment. Other over-the-counter should be documented. Danny says that inhaler is a medical item. It's usually needed, it's usually prescribed as needed. And I think that's into a comment on the second bullet point, but I will just point out that it does say non-medical items like sunscreen, as well as chronic medical conditions. So yes, an inhaler would definitely need documentation, but you could get a 12-month parent authorization to administer that inhaler for asthma. And Heidi says, what Floor said, and many exclamation points. Kelly says, what is the reasoning for adding the 12 months? And then I'm gonna have to translate this one. I think Allison did for me. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And Kelly says, what is the reasoning for adding the 12 months? I will say that the 12 months is something that is required currently in certified center. That is one of the places where we're getting a little more consistent. And in addition, what a parent may or may not allow may change over the course. So could dosages and things like that. We're also asking for parents. I believe that there'll be like a review of enrollment information as well, and that aligns with that. So just having a parent review their contact information and enrollment information to verify that it's still accurate. So that would be included in it, would be that kind of blanket authorization for, or 12-month authorization for non-medical items or sunscreen. I guess we could get specific and just say sunscreen and diaper cream, and then chronic medical conditions as well. And then there are let me just double check. There's another chat here. Anna says that there isn't a current length of time on medication authorization. I have family sign the form at the beginning of the year. beginning of the enrollment for common items used, and I don't want them to have to sign it again every year. And it should be valid for the whole time of enrollment. And adding things like this appears to be an easy way to find someone out of compliance for forgetting to renew paperwork. I hope it would be listed as an item that the provider would be given TA on. And on if they did forget about it, not a violation. So, and Anna, just let me, I want to restate what I'm hearing is that perhaps a suggested revision to that second bullet point would be providing some sort of allowing for a blanket authorization, maybe of non-medical items or whatever whatever term we use for that. And then just requiring perhaps annual authorization for medical conditions such as, that require ongoing medication like asthma. An EpiPen would be another example of a chronic medical condition. Does that sound right? Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Hey, Tina.
I was wondering, and it's a little off topic, but the compliances and rules differentiate from registered family to certified family. I can understand for a center, but I'm in the belief that I think that registered family and certified families rules should be very much the same as far as their compliances and things like that. I'm not understanding why. I know that there's differences in amount of children you can have, but as far as the rules, I would assume that those would all be pretty coherent to each other.
And that's one of our guiding principles that we are working with as we are revising the rules. We're making that attempt. So thank you for pointing that out, Tina.
Sure.
So Carmen, and then I've got to move us forward so I can be respectful of everybody's time. So
I was just going to agree with the last comment. Is the rules like we're so similar? I mean, that yeah, we can have a little bit more kids, but we're so similar on the basics of it. It's things like I have had parents, because I was registered before I was certified. They were like, why do you have to have a safety inspection now? And why is now you have to have all this stuff for the play equipment, but when you were registered, you didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So, this depth of bark or whatever underneath it and whatever, but when they were, so one of my mom's like, so they did not care if you were registered if they died? I said, but no, he died. But I'm like, no, the rules are different.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't understand why there are certain things that are different from one to the other, like that, like the safety thing. So,
okay, thank you.
That's what the.
Okay, so I'm gonna move us forward here.
Carol, sorry, one thing.
One second, I went and got like a sealable FedEx envelope.
I'm gonna mute there. Okay. The Annalise put in the we have these all the time from CCDF, which is the Child Care Development Fund Health and Safety Brief. And it speaks to the administration of medications. And for those of you that don't know, CCDF, the Child Care Development Fund, is Oregon receives a substantial amount of money from the federal government for childcare subsidies, as well as funding our licensing program. And because we receive those funds, there are certain requirements that have to be met by the state of Oregon, by child care providers as well. So, and they give a lot of technical assistance, and the document that Annalise has put into the chat is a brief from that organization. And Annalise says that sample rule language from several states and that annual meds checkoff seems to be the standard. And that's also, again, one of the reasons why it's that way in Certified Center is for the 12-month is because it aligns with kind of nationally recognized best practice. And Danny also mentions that annual review from a record keeping and liability standpoint is standard. Even if it's just a new signature each year documenting changes in a review. Yes, thanks, Danny. And you'll see something very similar in enrollment and record keeping as well.
Yeah, that'll be coming up.
And Annalise, thank you for sharing that resource.
Yes, thank you. So I want to transition us into the declaration of viewing. So the feedback we received regarding the current declaration of viewing is the requirement should be removed. So we've altered the wording in the proposed rule, and we removed the requirement that a specific form must be used. The form that is provided by CCLD is still an option to use, but it's one of several options that CCLD would accept as verification. So, and just one thing that I want to go ahead and do a little call out, specific call out, is that we're attempting to align our rules with the increased use of technology through mobile devices, phones, iPads, computers, for your communication with parents. So a text message would meet the requirement of notifying parents of a change of your license. So if you receive an exception, as the current rule reads, you need to have all of the parents sign a declaration of viewing every time you receive an exception or if there's a condition on your license. So we want to go ahead and help kind of streamline that process a bit. And if you use texting or electronic record keeping, we want to honor that. So you would not be required to have a signature from every parent. So I'm hoping that helps alleviate some of the barriers that having parents sign the declaration of viewing each time. I hope that limits that. Any thoughts on that proposed change? Yes, Abby.
Anna says that licenses and exceptions are already required to be posted where parents can see them easily, and having parents sign something stating that they've seen something we must have posted seems still seems redundant and unnecessary.
Thanks. Any other thoughts or feedback? Another chat come in, Abby?
I don't, Heidi. It says ITA, Anna.
I totally agree.
Oh, thank you. I'm like, so I'm not, you know, I lack that knowledge. So totally agree. And if it would be helpful, we can come back next week with more on the justification for why this is required and why it was required in the first place. I can't exactly speak to that unless Carol or Jenny can, from a historical perspective of why this was added. I believe in about 2016 or 2017, this was added to all types of care. And I'm trying to recall it, and I know it had something to do with just ensuring that parents know that the care that is being provided is licensed or registered by the state. But I can gather more details. Carol and I can gather more details on that as well, which would maybe help with understanding the reasoning and the rationale for this requirement.
And Jenny, I don't know if you, I see you come off mute. So
I
Jenny.
came off mute.
Yeah.
So Abby, I recall it as well. And the way I recall it it really was a parent awareness campaign as such. There were programs, and we had an issue with a particular one where parents had no awareness that the programs were not licensed. And so we tried to think of how could we help support families in knowing what programs are licensed and what programs are not. And the declaration from viewing seemed to be a process that would help support that. So families saw the license, they knew of the license, and they had to sign off on that happening. And then the reason that we asked for the updates if exceptions occurred is even though it's on the license, we wanted to draw awareness to that because those exceptions sometimes change the program themselves, and it was supporting families in that awareness and that knowledge.
Thanks, Jenny. Anna?
I mean, myself and any other program that's been in business for a long time knows exactly when and why this went into effect. And it was because of a program in Portland that was doing a lot of horrendous things to children that received a significant amount of negative press. And Governor Brown overreacted and issued a bunch of rules trying to increase the awareness of parents. Since then, every single time I've asked a parent to sign this form, they look at me like I'm crazy. And why would they need to sign a form stating that they know I'm a licensed program? And again, it's just a very redundant, annoying piece of paperwork. I don't know a single provider in the state that doesn't complain about it regularly. And if anybody's coming to my program that doesn't know I'm licensed and doesn't understand that they can see it directly on my wall, it's a crazy thing in this day and age to continue to have to do it. It's been going on for, almost 8 years now that we've been having to sign these. And it's pretty obvious to parents when they know that we are licensed programs. So.
Okay. Thank you. And Annalise.
I'm going to say the same thing that I said years ago when the state started doing this. I get the parent education piece. The problem is that you're educating parents in licensed childcare programs, trying to help parents understand that programs are not licensed is what really this was trying to do. And the problem with having touch points with parents that are already in licensed programs is that you're not reaching the people that this was intended to reach, which are the unlicensed programs, because unlicensed programs aren't going to use the form, and there's not going to be a license posted. If the state wants to do a parent education piece, make some fun little colored posters, give one out to every childcare provider. I'll be happy to post it on my front door. Hey, I'm licensed, check for my license inside. Are you using licensed care? I think there's also this very risky, dicey proposition that the state of Oregon has a long history of respecting and supporting exempt providers. And I think there's a message to be had there that's being sent to those exempt providers who are operating legally, either as private pay entities taking 3 or fewer children, or that are listed, right? And I think that the public relations angle on this is sketchy at best. So I think, there's a way to do parent education. There's a way to accomplish this. We had given several ideas back in the day when this first was created. Governor Brown didn't like those ideas. Alyssa Chatterjee didn't like those ideas. So I think it's time to revisit some of those suggestions, get rid of the form, and let's do a true campaign that doesn't place the burden on providers and parents that are already using licensed childcare, and that also doesn't stigmatize exempt providers who are operating legally here in this state and are listed with the DHS direct pay unit.
Thanks, Annalise. And Abby.
There's just a couple of comments in the chat. Heidi said that she added the statement to her enrollment contract, which is the example that's given in the proposed changes box. Kelly says she agrees with Anna, and Heidi says that it would be more sensible to not have unlicensed care and otherwise promote licensed care. I totally agree, ITA, with Annalise. I learned something new today. Thank you, Heidi. And yes, with Annalise, says Kelly.
And Denise.
First of all, I am going to use ITA and see how many people actually know that, because I learned something new as well.
I did too.
And then also, Annalise, you really brought up a good point that I never ever thought about before, and about the burden on licensed childcare, carrying the load about that I'm licensed and then non-licensed, not having to do anything. So it's really something to think about. Thank you for bringing that up.
Hey, I'm gonna move us on. So we're proposing some changes to the enrollment information and attendance records. Based on feedback from the listening sessions, we're proposing removing the name and telephone number of the child's dentist from the required information to be included on the child's enrollment form. And we'll be adding in or emergency care facility, if applicable, as an option to the name and telephone number of a child's medical provider, since some children may not have one specific designated healthcare provider. We're also proposing some language to help clarify in the rules which caregivers and children need to be reflected on the attendance record. During the listening sessions, we did hear feedback that attendance records are not reliable nor necessary. However, it's important to point out that attendance records are key to accountability of children while they're in your care, as well as if there was an emergency where you may have to evacuate. Those attendance records really help the face to name type of accountability. In addition, they do support providers, since the records indicate days and times that particular children are in attendance or have been in attendance, and they help show when a provider's responsibility starts and ends and when a parent's start and ends. And we'll be clarifying in the rules that both the enrollment and the attendance records can be either in electronic or paper formats now. So this is going to allow multiple ways to collect and maintain information. So we're hoping that that will be easier to navigate for people. So any thoughts or feedback on these proposed changes? Yes, Abby.
Anna says that she has never understood why the name and information for a doctor and dentist were needed, and that she's never used that information or called in 12 years. And Kelly says Anna agrees that in 26 years that information has not been needed. And Danny states that and if a child needs an emergency care facility, they go to the closest one and not a preferred one. So
that's great. That's great.
Mm-hmm. And then Anna says, what authority do I have to tell in EMS what hospital to take a child to? Doesn't matter what the parent prefers, they get them where they need to go as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Any feedback on the changes for attendance records? So did we clarify which caregivers and children need to be reflected on the attendance record appropriately, or is there more clarification that is needed on that aspect? Is that a good change? A good proposal? Oh, Annalise, I saw you say no.
No, I mean, so first of all, look, here's the thing, right? And I understand that there's probably never going to be a solution, but let's recognize, number one, that licensing attendance records will never work adequately for direct pay unit and ERDC. So automatically I have to keep two different attendance records, completely different standards. Number two, so I'm keeping different sets of attendance records in case, I get audited, and then of course when licensing comes through, because if I used the attendance records I'm keeping for DPU, it wouldn't work for licensing. And if I use the licensing attendance records, and providers regularly try to do this and they get overpayments, and then we've got to figure that out. And I help probably 2 or 3 providers every week, sometimes more than that, figure that out. Attendance records are a necessary evil, and I'm willing to admit that, right? I think, and I understand why you want to have providers and caregivers and childcare children on attendance records. It's just a difficult piece to manage, and providers need attendance records for different reasons, right? I mean, payroll, taxes, food program, and food program is a whole other record, right? So, and we needed attendance records for some of the grants that happened in the past, right? Like to document weekend or overnight care and things like that. So, they're tricky. And I think, just like I said earlier with medications and some of the other discussion that we've had, some of my comments, and with the group sizes, really there's a lot of specificity depending on the program and what you're trying to accomplish with those records. There's not necessarily going to be a one size fits all. And so I think it's fine to have minimum standards, but we need to recognize that it's not necessarily licensing. When licensing comes out, and what I see from licensing is sometimes that it's not who's on the record or the lack of who's on the record, it's the formatting and some of those things. So for me, as long as those minimum standards can be met, I think the rules should not be too prescriptive.
Okay.
Right. So literally documentation of staff to child ratios and staffing. And I mean, even workman's comp, you want to have your staff people listed as workman's comp. The problem is like, so for workman's comp, right? If I take one of my staff off of ratio and send them to the grocery store, right, to go grab some milk, they have to stay signed in, but technically they're not on ratio. Right. So I think, what licensing is really after is documentation of child to staff ratios and capacity. And as long as those can be documented by the attendance records, I think the rest of it's sort of, is superfluous.
Okay. So in just to clarify, so in your opinion, the face to name doesn't you're not there's not a benefit to that. Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to make sure.
I think the face to a name, if I'm an owner, right, and I'm a provider, sometimes I'm not in my program. When I can go on my Lilio app or my Kid Care app or whatever and see who's signed in, right, and look at ratios and be able to check that when I'm not in my program, I think that's a good thing. If I'm a center director or I'm a teacher and I've got a center of 51 kids, that's becomes a little more important. But for an RF provider, the face to name, I don't know how helpful that is. And to be honest, in an emergency situation, I don't, having spoken to EMTs and people over the years, emergency responders, participated in emergency planning, that just doesn't seem to be something that stands out as, if we're doing whatever, it's not like we're not gonna, if we find something, if we find an attendance record, okay, fine. If it's on a phone and we can't unlock the phone, it's not going to do us any good anyway. So I get that there's maybe a value in that in some limited circumstances, but generally speaking, in a family childcare setting, if you are an RF, you know what 10 kids are in your program, you know who's there and you can see them, right? And face to name, I don't need that written down on a piece of paper. Let's be honest. And if I, even with 16 children, if I'm here and I'm on site, I know I can see the 16 kids, and maybe I have 8 kids in this room and 8 kids in the next room, but the staff people that are assigned to those children certainly know who they are. And I don't know that face to name is something that's really used much in family childcare. So I think, I mean, I get it, right? Trying to standardize the rules between centers and family childcare, but I creating rules for the sake of creating rules isn't a good thing.
No.
Right?
And we totally
and
agree
if
with
it
you.
doesn't make sense, look, every rule should have a point and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not a logical point and purpose, right? If it doesn't meet the government's interest, right? Then I don't know that it's necessarily a helpful rule. I think there's a place for best practice.
Okay.
But I think rules should be reserved for those things that where there's a compelling government interest.
Okay. Thank you, Annalise.
Yeah.
Denise?
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of things. I know that like centers do their attendance on like Brightwheel and apps like that. And I know that they have children that are using the state, funding to pay for their childcare. And so why couldn't it be the same for certified family and registered family if they're using that for attendance and they're using that also for the staff to clock in and clock out? I'm not sure that I think that's a good thing to be able to put it onto an app. And then also when I was doing registered family childcare, I was audited by the IRS, and parents were saying that they paid me more than they did. And yes, my attendance records did come into play when I was audited by the IRS to know when a parent was their child was there and when they weren't. So
thanks, Denise. Abby.
A couple things in the chat. Anna says that she's glad that electronic records are being put into rule clearly, as LS or licensing specialists have already been accepting these. It's a good change. Just one suggestion, I think the word caregivers could be confusing. There are teachers working in the program, maybe state assistant 1 or 2 instead of caregivers, or anyone counting in ratios. Danny says, or staff, assuming that you want to include anyone who would be in ratio. Tina says, doesn't DPU go by what they sign a contract for? So whether or not they are there, it's the space you hold for them. And Heidi says, I use a face to name and make my staff count off all children every time they move inside to out or from upstairs to the basement, but I'm cool with fewer formal rules. Tina says, I think registered and certified should be the same. It's centers are on a different level. Oh, so that registered and certified families should be the same and that centers are on a different level. And Tina says, Annalise says, Tina, no common misconceptions.
Great. Well, thank you. I am going to move us forward. So we did want to bring this forward just for your thoughts. So this section regarding notifications was not a part of the feedback that we heard during the listening sessions. However, it's a topic that the rulemaking team would like your thoughts and opinions on. In the current rules, there are different timelines for different scenarios. So the required reporting timelines vary between 24 hours, 48 hours, and for some situations up to 5 days. And we're proposing altering the timelines to be more specific, so they read immediate upon pickup and before 5 p.m. the next business day, which we'll review on the next slide. So some examples of notifying parents immediately, or it could be an emergency contact, is if a child was administered medication not in accordance with direction, a child sustains an injury that may need evaluation by a physician, or any impact to a child's head, is bitten by an animal when the skin is broken, or when an evaluation by a physician may be needed, and has been fed human milk or formula intended for another child. So those are just some broad examples. Likewise, notifying parents upon pickup any medication administered to their child, any known injuries such as cuts, scrapes, or bites from other children requiring first aid treatment, an animal bite when the skin is not broken, and if you implemented emergency plans and procedures except for your standard drills. So is there any feedback to that? What I'd like to preface is that the rulemaking team at CCLD, we acknowledge that you may already be doing this, but it's also, if it's in rule, it helps support new providers as they are coming on and learning their business. Plus, by having it in rule, it does clearly define the expectations. So parents, providers, and CCLD staff understand the requirements similarly. And so we're looking at this kind of promoting the consistency, but also transparency. So thoughts on this topic? Anna.
The wording "any impact to a child's head" needs a lot of clarification, because there are so many things that could happen. Is that like a playground ball hit the child in the head? A child bonks their head on a piece of playground equipment. A child falls and splits their head open and is bleeding. Like, as you can see, there are so many places that could fall into that would say an impact to a child's head. And many of them are not going to need to be immediately notifying a parent. So there needs to be a lot more information.
It does say injury, and so that may need evaluation by a physician. So we or any impact. So think along the lines of injury more than just you know, a little tap on the head. But that's great. If we need to clarify that, we most certainly can look at that.
I think that could be very easily misconstrued. So I would say an injury that impacts the child's head, instead of having the "or" there, would make it a lot more clear.
Okay, great feedback. Kelly.
With 16 kids, if I have to remember to tell each parent about each cut that a child has, I'm going to be spending an hour at pickup. The kids hurt themselves all the time. So having to, I mean, if I know, if it's something serious, if something happened, you know, I'm going to tell parents, but I think requiring us to tell every parent of every scratch or cut or whatever is a little much to put in the rules. Serious things, yes. But little things like that, I think that just goes, you know, animal bites, yes. Child bites, yes. If they broke the skin, I get that. But the little things, I got too much other stuff to do. I can't be talking to parents every day, especially when you have some accident prone ones that are always hurting themselves.
Thanks, Kelly. Annalise.
Okay. Lower my hand here. All right. So what I would suggest is sustains an injury or impact to the child's head that may need evaluation by a physician.
Okay.
Is bitten by a child or animal where the skin is broken and indicates a need for evaluation by a physician.
Okay.
Or medical attention. I mean, you could interchangeable, right? And I would say instead of a physician, I would say a medical professional, because most people don't see doctors anymore.
a great call out, Annalise.
I
Thanks.
mean, certified nurses and RNs seem to be triaging most of this stuff at urgent cares
Mhm.
these days.
Mhm.
Has been fed human milk. Okay. Or formula, but I think that that formula that needs to be qualified, that may, I don't know, there needs to be some sort of allergic thing, because here's the deal. If I make a bottle for baby A and give that bottle to baby B, I mean, formula is formula.
Okay.
There's no emergency there unless there's something allergic, unless that child would be allergic, or it's something that's highly specialized that could cause issues. So I don't think 99% of the cases where formula was intended for another child, that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's not an emergency contact immediately. Right. So formula, I would maybe even just take out.
Okay.
There's already rules that address, bottle sharing and sanitation and food handling. I get human milk because that's a bodily fluid, but even human milk, though, there's all sorts of trade or informal trade things and networks and things. So I mean, I don't necessarily know that that's an emergency. And then I have a problem with notifying a parent every day. If I'm administering medication to them, the parent already signed the form for me to administer the medication. They brought the medication. They obviously know that I'm giving it.
Okay.
I think the better piece is that it would go under emergency if a child received medication they were not supposed to receive.
Okay.
But why I would notify a parent, I mean, this could become problematic. Like if I'm having to give 2 injections a day of insulin, and then that's 2 text messages I have to send, or I have to every day I have to say to the parent, hey, I gave insulin again today. That's wasting everybody's time. Parents are already, I mean, I think the bigger issue is medications that were not administered to their child that should have been, right?
Okay.
The known injuries, I mean, I guess, requiring first aid treatment, but if they required first aid treatment, why wouldn't you have notified the parent right away? I mean, to me, that's just not common sense. It's not logical.
Okay.
Animal bite to a child when the skin is not broken, I guess that's kind of weird. I mean, I guess, yeah. But I don't know why you just wouldn't. I mean, I guess, yeah, parents upon pickup, I guess notify the parents of that. And then implemented the emergency plan. If you have an emergency and you implemented your emergency plan, why would you not notify the parents or the emergency contact immediately? Because in an emergency, wouldn't that be the very definition of wanting to get a hold of somebody immediately?
That it could depend on what the emergency was, maybe. But we'll definitely.
I don't know, because I mean, I would disagree with that, because look, here's the thing, right? If it is an emergency, that's something that's serious. I mean, I'm not playing around. I don't think it's a good idea to implement your emergency plan and not let parents know right away. I mean, I don't understand why we would want it. That just doesn't make sense.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you have a specific example, but again, if you're writing rules, the real reason that regulations happen is so that they can be enforced, so that people are compliant. And so I don't understand why we would want to write rules that have so much ambiguity and so much, room for various scenarios. I mean, what you're essentially writing becomes these cover it all rules that basically a provider could be cited for under any and every circumstance. And I don't think that's what we should be doing. We should be addressing, again, specific issues, specific concerns, specific problems that have arisen in childcare. And if it hasn't been a problem, I don't know that writing a rule is necessary. Hey, guidance document, best practice, go for it. But I don't know that we should be writing rules to just enforce micromanagement on childcare programs.
Great. Thanks, Annalise. So Floor and then Abby, and we've got to move forward so we can get through. I want to try to get us through the slides and be respectful of your time. So Floor.
So you mentioned that this it's kind of to educate new providers, because from my point of view, we as providers do all these on a regular basis when the kids get picked up, right? We let them know if we notice that they have a scratch or if they had a Band-Aid on, we will notify the parents at that moment that, oh, they found the playground, we put a Band-Aid on, whatever, right? So I think we come back to the plain language and an easy way to do this. As Annalise was saying, cuts, scratches, those don't need to be notified unless, as it says that, is required first aid treatment. Now, a Band-Aid is not first aid treatment, right? Because kids can use Band-Aids for whatever. So I think we need to specify very clear that it's only requiring first aid treatment. The animal bite on a child, yeah, you are going to notify the parent about that. The emergency plans, I don't think you need to let them know upon pickup, because they already have your emergency plan with them, because when they register with you, you should have given your emergency plan and procedures, so they know that. So I don't think it's needed to notify upon parents pickup.
Okay, thank you, Floor. Abby, there's probably some things in the chat. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Just a couple of things here. Heidi says, I guess I document all scrapes and cuts, so this seems reasonable to me. I didn't realize this wasn't required. And there's a little bit, Heidi, I'll say that there's a little bit a difference in this a little bit, which about injury reporting and things like that. Anna says, skin needs in the summer alone could take up tons of time every day. If a child just needs a Band-Aid and happily off playing again, that's really unnecessary. If a child is injured and needs comfort, time to recover, etc., it's much more reportable. That's a much more reportable than a small scratch a child doesn't even flinch about. I think it's Denise says, for liability reasons, wouldn't it be best practice to document and inform parents? Also, an impact to a child's head is a scary one. How do we know when a concussion didn't happen? Something to consider. And then Anna says, if I have logged the injury in the child's electronic injury report, do I still have to tell them, or is that sufficient? They look at the report if they want. And I'm guessing as long as they are notified, then and if your way of notification is through an electronic system, we actually specify that in with injury reporting as well. That can work. Denise says, I think that an electronic report would be sufficient. Yep. And then I said 5 minutes left, and then applying a Band-Aid is first aid, says Kelly.
Awesome. Okay, so we've our notifications continued. So here are some examples. As mentioned in the previous slide, the current rules, they have varying timelines for reporting certain situations to CCLD. This is specific to reporting to CCLD, not to parents. For example, any serious injury or incident must be reported to CCLD within 5 calendar days after the occurrence, but any damage to the building must be reported within 48 hours of the occurrence. So the revised proposed wording pertaining to the reporting requirements is more specific and we're hoping that it's easier to follow than having those multiple timelines. Additionally, we're going to be adding in a definition of business day. Currently in the center rules, it reads a business day means Monday through Friday, but does not include any holiday as defined, and we have the statute there, or any day that the central office of CCLD is closed. And so we're hoping that that will clarify the requirement of when you need to go ahead and report to CCLD. So, Floor, is your hand up from previous or okay? Any thoughts or feedback on this? Our hope is that we can provide a little more consistency with those timelines and make it easier for you all to know when you need to report certain things. Yes, Denise.
So, I mean, I see your examples of, is this examples of what's currently in the rules? And then examples of what would be the rule after?
So this notifying CCLD by 5 p.m. the next business day, these are the next business day. Notifying CCLD, there's no time limit on that. You just need to notify us.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be done by the next business day or by 5 p.m.
Okay, but the examples aren't as you know, thorough or whatever the word might be about when you would notify. So you know, like if you're temporarily relocating children, I mean, we just recently had a fire today in La Pine, and if providers are relocating because there's a fire and they have to evacuate, wouldn't that be, I mean, I don't understand why it wouldn't be like laid out about what you would be notifying about also in the new rule. Does that make sense, or am I missing something?
I think, Abby, I saw you come off mute, so.
And I wanted to kind of address maybe a different part of Denise's question too, is these are just examples. There is there is kind of a longer list. And some of the items that are on that list for the next business day report to CCLD currently exist in rule already. But the time frame is different. So for example, any serious injury or incident involving a child, and we define what a serious injury is currently, I think it's a 5-day reporting timeline, and that is now proposed to be by 5 p.m. the next business day.
Okay, so we're just looking at the timeline. We're not looking at scenarios that would be reported. Okay.
They're just examples. Yep. And are there any things in the chat, Abby?
There are not.
Okay, then I'm gonna move us on. I'm sorry for rushing, but I want to be respectful because I know all of you have had a super busy day. So we concluded our first session. Thank you for all of your feedback. So basically what our next steps are is we're going to review all of the information, the comments and suggestions that you guys provided us today. We're going to develop some proposed rule language incorporating your suggestions whenever possible. We're going to present the proposed language at the next work group meeting on July 9th. And the agenda and topic discussion will be sent out prior to the meeting. So I just want to thank you for your time and feedback on these topics. Your attendance has been recorded and will be used for reimbursement purposes. So the reimbursement process will be reviewed at the last work group meeting. If you have any additional feedback that you'd like to provide, please feel free to send me an email at this email address, and I will include that into all of the other feedback that we go ahead and collect and categorize. Similar to this meeting, a Zoom reminder will be automatically emailed to you prior to the meeting, and I'll send out a separate email with the next session's topics. And if there aren't any other questions or concerns, I will end the meeting, and we look forward to seeing you again on July 9th. Thank you.